Hello all, welcome to our class. Now through this video, I'll be discussing in detail about the design of a reinforced soil retaining wall. Now in our previous classes, we have already seen what is a reinforced soil retaining wall, how is it different from a conventional retaining wall, and what are its advantages over a conventional retaining wall. Also, we have seen in detail the construction procedure of a reinforced soil retaining wall. Now today I'll be discussing on the design part in detail, and the design part consists mainly of the external stability analysis and the internal stability analysis. So like any important design, there are certain design codes which are to be followed. Now for the design of a reinforced soil retaining wall, the two most important design codes which are followed are BS 8006, which is a UK code, and then we have the Federal Highway Administration Code, which is a US code. Now there are many differences between the two codes. So if you want to know more about the differences, you can refer the PPT which I had shared with you. Now comparatively, it is the Federal Highway Administration Code which is a more simpler design procedure. So for our design also, we will be following the guidelines furnished in the Federal Highway Administration Code. So see, the figure here shows a typical cross section of a reinforced soil retaining wall. Now H here denotes the total height of the retaining wall, which is measured from top of the leveling pad to the top of the backfill soil. Okay, so H is actually the total height of the retaining wall measured from top of the leveling pad. This is the leveling pad. So this is the leveling pad. Now, so from the top of the leveling pad to the top of the backfill soil measures the total height of the reinforced soil retaining wall. Now L here denotes the total length of the reinforcement which is embedded into the soil. Okay, and SV here denotes the vertical spacing between the reinforcements located at various depths along the height of the wall. So here I have shown a difference in soil used. See here, L actually denotes the length of the reinforcement which is used in soil. Okay, so to that extent, it becomes a reinforced soil block. Okay, so here this pink portion, this rectangular portion is your reinforced soil block. Okay, so that shows the extent up to which your reinforcements are embedded into the soil. Now that is the active part which takes care of the unsupported excavation, or which takes care or which performs the function of a retaining wall. So this rectangular portion up to which your reinforcements are embedded into the soil becomes a reinforced soil block. Okay, so that is normally treated as a rigid soil block. Now beyond that, beyond this reinforced soil block is your backfill soil. Okay, so your backfill soil is a portion of soil beyond the length of the reinforcement. So mostly, see, if availability of soil is not an issue, then we can use the same type of soil in the reinforced soil block as well as in the backfill soil portion which is behind it. Okay. But if availability is an issue, then two different types of soils may be used in reinforced soil block as well as in backfill soil portion. Now, whichever soil is used as in the reinforced soil block, it should satisfy all the codal requirements. Now, that is a mandatory thing. So we have generally seen, what type of soil is used. Okay, so generally we would prefer a granular type of soil which facilitates a decent drainage within it, so that there is no pore pressure built up within the retaining wall. Also, so basically we will choose a granular soil with a higher angle of internal friction, so that there the there is a good interaction between the soil and the reinforcement. Whereas in the backfill soil, it need not be as good as the soil used in the reinforced soil block. It can be a soil of marginal quality or moderate quality, but still it should satisfy certain COTL requirements. But it doesn't have to be as stringent as the ones to be followed for a soil used in this reinforced soil block. Okay. Now, so through this design, what the parameters which we are trying to fix here is the, or which we are trying to find out is the length of the reinforcement which is used, and then the vertical spacing between the reinforcements. Okay. So these two are the important design parameters which we have to find out through the external stability analysis and internal stability analysis. Okay. Now, if the soil used in the reinforced soil block as well as in the backfill soil are two different types of soils, then we'll have to, it will be good if we can separately, okay, mention out the parameters used. Okay. So, in the beginning itself, you can just list down the reinforced soil parameters as phi r, gamma r and Ka, and the backfill soil parameters as phi b, gamma b and Kab, where phi denotes the angle of internal friction, gamma denotes the unit weight of soil, and Ka denotes the lateral coefficient of active earth pressure. Okay. So, R and B denotes whether it's a reinforced soil fill or whether it's a backfill soil fill. Now, here you can see that I have used the coefficient of active earth pressure here. Now, see, the reason is that here, since we are talking about a reinforced soil retaining wall which is constructed using geosynthetic type of reinforcements, that is, it can either be a geotextile or it can either be a geogrid which is used. So for these, these are actually polymeric materials, okay, or we can call them as flexible type of reinforcements. Now, what really happens is, in a retaining wall which is constructed using flexible type of reinforcements, when a pressure is applied on such walls, obviously the soil will move a little. Okay, like when you apply pressure, the soil starts moving laterally outward. So in order to provide that lateral restraint or to keep it in place, we'll be giving reinforcements. Okay, now in a flexible type of reinforcements, actually the soil has to move a little for the tensile force to mobilize in the reinforcement. Okay. So, whereas in a rigid reinforcement or a stiffer reinforcement like metallic reinforcement, we would use the coefficient of earth pressure at rest up to certain portion, up to certain height of the wall or up to a certain depth of the wall. Whereas in a retaining wall, which is made up of geosynthetic materials or polymeric materials, there we'll have to use the coefficient of active earth pressure, okay, while calculating the forces which is actually exerted in retaining wall. Now, the design procedure, as I said, there are two parts. That is the external stability part, and then we have the internal stability part. This is the external stability part, and then the internal stability part. The external stability part is mainly done to check whether the reinforced soil block, okay, so we have already seen that up to the length of the reinforcement is the that becomes the reinforced soil block. Okay, so that is the active part. Now that reinforced soil block will be prone to several types of failures. Okay, external failures, like it can be prone to a sliding failure, or it can be prone to an overturning failure, or it can even be prone to a bearing capacity failure. Okay, so we have to check whether this rigid soil block, that is the reinforced rigid soil block, is actually stable against sliding failure, overturning failure, and bearing capacity failure. Now through this stability analysis, we will be fixing the length L of the reinforced soil block. Okay. Now once the length is fixed, we will move on to the internal stability analysis, where we will be checking the stability or safety of the reinforcement which is used at various depths. Okay, so we have already learned that the reinforcements are prone to two different types of failures. So either the reinforcement can get ruptured, that is if the tensile force mobilized within the reinforcement is greater than the tensile capacity or tensile strength of the reinforcement, then the reinforcement will fail by rupture. Okay. Then the second type of failure for the reinforcement is that when the reinforcement doesn't have sufficient length given beyond the rupture plane, then what happens is that due to forces exerted on the reinforcement, there is a chance of this reinforcement getting pulled out of its location. Okay, so that pulling out of the reinforcement occurs due to insufficient embedment length beyond the rupture plane of the retaining wall. Okay, so these are the two different types of failures which can occur to the reinforcement. So we'll be checking the stability based on these failures, and then we'll be fixing the vertical spacing between the reinforcements. Okay, actually in external stability analysis, other than these three, there is a fourth type of failure which can occur to a retaining wall, and that is called as a slip circle failure. Now in slip circle failure, it occurs in retaining walls which are mostly constructed on soft soils. Okay, so retaining walls which are constructed on soft soil foundations, they are prone to slip circle failures. Okay, and that is a fourth type of failure, but right now we'll only be checking the stability for sliding, overturning, and bearing capacity failure. Now in internal stability analysis also there is a third chance of failure due to a poor interconnection between the phasing panel and reinforcement. Okay, so that is also a type of failure which can happen internally for the retaining wall. So we'll start with the external stability analysis here. So external stability analysis is done to fix the length of the reinforcement. Okay. So the first part of external stability analysis starts with the check for sliding failure, sliding type of failure. Now here if you see the diagram, now sliding type of failure can occur due to any lateral pressures which are exerted on this reinforced soil rigid block. Okay, so we have seen that the length up to which the reinforcement is embedded in the soil, that becomes the active part of the retaining wall. Okay, so it's called as a reinforced soil rigid block. Okay, now this block is the one which is prone to any type of failure. Now it can so when lateral pressures are exerted onto this block, there is a chance that this block can get slided out of its position. Okay, so now the forces which mainly cause such sliding failures are the self weight of the backfill soil, and then the weight due to any other additional loads. Okay, so here there are two additional loads which are shown here, that is the dead load QD and then we have the live load QL. Okay, so these are the two additional loads which will come onto the retaining wall, or we can say which will come onto this reinforced rigid soil block, and which can cause its sliding failure. Okay, so when we are calculating the forces, so this triangular variation is actually an effect of the self weight of the backfill soil, whereas this rectangular variation is an effect of the additional surcharge load which is coming on the rigid block. Okay, so in order to calculate the forces, we just need to take the area of these diagrams. Now if other than these loads, okay, so here we have the self weight of backfill soil, which is a force exerted on rigid block, and then we have the surcharge loads in the form of dead load QD and in the form of live load QL. Okay. Now other than this, if there are some other horizontal forces acting at the top of the wall, okay, there can be forces which act at the top of the wall. Okay, like this, let that be H. Okay, then those forces are also to be included in the calculation of the sliding force P. Okay, now these horizontal forces can be due to the forces exerted on the crash barriers, or it can be the forces due to the braking forces, or forces acting on bridge abutments. Okay, so you can just check, what are the several loads or design loads that can come on a retaining wall. Okay, so in addition to the self weight of the wall and the surcharge loads, if there are some other loads which act on the wall, then those forces or loads are also to be included in the calculation of the sliding forces. Okay, so here our sliding force will be area of this triangle, which gives you the self weight of the backfill soil, plus area of the rectangle, which will give you the self weight of the additional surcharge loads. Okay, so that will be half into KAB into gamma B into H into H. Okay, that is the area of the triangle, plus KAB into Q into H will give you the area of the rectangle. Okay, so here KAB is the coefficient of active earth pressure of the backfill soil, and gamma B is the unit weight of backfill soil. Okay, so this gives you the total sliding force which causes destabilization. Okay, so here this is actually destabilization. Okay, it is a destabilization force. Now, in order to resist this sliding force, actually this rigid block has to exert a resisting force here. Okay, so basically it will be the self weight of this rigid block which exerts a resistance force against the sliding force. Okay, now that resistance force exerted by this reinforced soil rigid block will be acting along the base. Okay, so that resistance force is actually calculated as mu, which is the friction factor, into the self weight of the reinforced block plus the weight due to the surcharge load. Okay, now here we will not be considering the live load in calculating the resisting force. Okay, so you'll have to take note of that, because live loads, as per the design code, live loads will not be considered in the calculation of the resisting forces or moments. Okay, so live loads will only be included in the calculation of the sliding forces. So that is why we have included live load in the calculation of the sliding force P, but whereas in the calculation of the resisting force, we have not included the effect of live load. So that is why in the picture also, in this figure also, the live load is not extended up to the rigid soil block. Okay, so basically the resistance force against sliding will be due to the self weight of this reinforced soil rigid block and the weight of the dead load. Okay, so that is gamma R into H into, that is gamma R into H into L plus QD into L. Okay, so that will give you the resistance force. So totally it will be the resistance force into the friction factor. Now friction factor mu is tan of 2 by 3 of phi m. Now this phi m is actually taken as the lesser value of angle of internal friction of either the reinforced soil fill or the foundation soil. Okay, so whichever is lesser, you will adopt that value of angle of internal friction for calculating the friction factor. Now, once you have calculated the sliding force and the resistance force, now we have to check the stability. So stability will be checked by calculating the factor of safety against sliding. So that is resisting force by sliding force. Now if the structure is stable, factor of safety should be greater than 1.5 or at least equal to 1.5. But if the factor of safety that you have calculated is found to be less than 1.5 means then you will have to change the length of the reinforced block and again do the calculation. Okay, until the factor of safety becomes either equal to or greater than 1.5. Okay, see there are actually two options. Either you can increase the length for getting the factor of safety greater than 1.5, or you can use a better soil within the reinforced soil fill. Okay, but we might have a limitation in bringing the best quality soil to site or in their availability. So mostly it will be better if we can increase the length and change the design. Okay, so once your factor of safety becomes greater than 1.5, then you can just go with the length which you have chosen. Now we will move to the second type of external stability analysis. So basically here we will be checking the stability of the reinforced soil block against overturning. Okay, so there is a chance that due to these forces acting on the rigid block, this rigid block can overturn about the base. Okay, now in order to prevent that, what happens? The reinforced block itself has to provide a resisting moment there. Then only it can prevent its overturning. Okay, now the overturning moment are due to the forces which we have already seen before. Okay, so overturning moment is also due to the self weight of the forces exerted by the self weight of the backfill soil and the weight of the additional loads such as weight of the surcharge loads, that is the dead load and live load. Okay, so here if you want to calculate the moment, you just need to multiply that area with the distance at which this force is acting from the base. Okay, so for a triangle, so this half into KAB into gamma B into H square is actually the force exerted by the self weight of the backfill soil, which we had already calculated earlier. Now into H by 3. H by 3 is the distance at which the force is acting from the base. Okay, plus this KAB into QD plus QL into H is actually the area of the rectangle, which is an effect of the weight of the surcharge loads, dead load and live load. Okay, so that area into this H by 2. H by 2 is the distance of the force acting from the base. Okay, now this force into distance will give you the total overturning moment which can cause the rigid block to overturn about its base. So this is the total overturning moment. Now the resisting moment is also provided by the rigid block itself. Okay, so here the resisting moment is offered by the rigid soil block. So we had already calculated what is the resisting force offered by the rigid block, that is gamma into H into L. Now the distance at which that will be acting is L by 2 plus the weight due to the dead load, that is QD into L, into distance at which it is acting, that is L by 2. Okay, so this will give you the total resisting moment which is contributed by the self weight of the rigid soil fill and the weight due to the additional surcharge load, which is the dead load. Okay, so here also you can see that live load is not included in the calculation of the resisting moment, but it is included in the calculation of the overturning moment. Okay, so finally once you have calculated the resisting moment and overturning moment, now you can check the stability against overturning. So the factor of safety against overturning should be greater than 2. Okay, so if it is not greater than 2, again you will have to increase the length and repeat the calculations. But mostly, once you have fixed the length after confirming the stability against sliding, then mostly that length itself can be used. That can be used for continuing the stability against overturning and bearing capacity failure. Okay, so we have completed the overturning stability analysis. Now the third type of failure analysis which we have to see is the check for the bearing capacity failure of the reinforced soil rigid block. Okay, now for the same, So if your foundation soil is not having sufficient bearing capacity, then obviously your retaining wall is prone to failure. Okay. So here for analysis part, we will be finding out what is the allowable pressure which is acting on the foundation base. Okay. So then only we can check it with the allowable bearing capacity of the soil. Okay. So first we have to calculate the total allowable pressure which is, no, total pressure which is coming on the foundation soil. Okay. So for calculating the same, what we assume is that we'll be assuming this foundation soil as a strip footing of length L. Okay. Basically strip footing of width B, but here in this case that width B is equal to the length L of the reinforced soil rigid block. Okay. So basically we are doing all the calculations per unit length perpendicular to the plane of the analysis. Okay. So whatever forces you have calculated, whatever moments you have calculated so far, it has all been calculated per unit length of the retaining wall. Okay. So that unit length means it is perpendicular to our plane of analysis. So here you have to consider the foundation soil as a strip footing of width B. So width B means in our plane of analysis that width B is actually equal to length of the reinforcement, okay, or length of the reinforced soil block. Now we have to calculate the total bearing pressure which is coming on the foundation soil. Okay, so that total bearing pressure can be calculated using this formula. This formula is given by Meyerhof. So this formula gives the bearing pressure sigma Vb is equal to Rv, which is the total vertical load divided by the effective width over which that load is acting. Okay, so that is B minus 2E is the effective width over which the pressure is exerted. Okay, so why minus 2E is because the footing actually loses contact over a length of 2 times the eccentricity. So that is why the effective width over which the pressure actually acts is B minus 2E. So the total vertical load divided by the effective width will give you the actual bearing pressure coming on the foundation soil. Okay. So here in our plane of analysis, B, that is the width of the footing is equal to the length of the reinforcement itself. Now we have to calculate the total vertical load which is coming on the foundation soil. Now that is equal to the total vertical load actually coming on the foundation is the self weight of the reinforced soil fill, okay, plus the self weight of the dead loads and the live loads. Okay, so that is the total vertical loads which are coming onto the soil. Now other than this, if there are any other permanent loads acting on the retaining wall, such as braking forces or crash barrier loads or abutment loads, then those forces are also to be included in the calculation of vertical loads. Okay, so here it will be gamma into H into B plus QL plus QD into B. So here our B is equal to length of the reinforcement. So gamma is actually gamma R, okay, which is the unit weight of the reinforcement fill, soil fill. Okay. So once you have calculated the total vertical load coming on the foundation, then we have to check the eccentricity. So eccentricity is actually equal to the overturning moment divided by the vertical load. Now overturning moment you have already calculated. So you'll have to see whether in soils your eccentricity is lesser than B by 6 or L by 6. And in rocks the eccentricity should be less than B by 4 or L by 4. Okay. So once that criteria is fulfilled, then we can use that eccentricity in this equation and find out the actual bearing pressure coming on foundation soil. Okay. So once you have calculated the actual bearing pressure sigma Vb, you have to compare it with the allowable bearing pressure of the foundation soil. So if that actual bearing pressure is lesser than or almost equal to allowable bearing pressure, then your design is safe. Okay. So then, so by then you will be able to fix the length of the reinforcement, or you can go ahead with the length of the reinforcement which you have chosen for conducting all this stability analysis. Okay. So now to sum it all, we had done the external stability analysis of the reinforced soil rigid block, again sliding failure, overturning failure and bearing capacity failure. Now the only thing which you have to remember is that all this forces which causes failure includes the forces exerted by the backfill soil plus the forces exerted by the additional surcharge loads, that is the live loads and dead loads, and other than that whatever additional loads are given in your question. Okay, so all those forces have to be taken in for calculating the forces causing failure. Now moving on to the forces causing, the forces which provide the resistance, we include the forces which actually provide the resistance are the self weight of the reinforced soil block and then the weight due to the additional dead loads. Okay. So here we will not be considering the live loads. Okay, so in calculating the resistant forces, we will only be considering the self weight of the reinforced soil fill and the dead loads. Okay, no live loads will be considered in calculation of resisting forces or moments. So with this we have completed the external stability analysis. Now we will move on to the internal stability analysis. Okay. So once we have fixed the length of the reinforcement through the external stability analysis, the next design parameter which we have to fix is the SV. SV is a vertical spacing between the reinforcements. Okay. Now before that, there is one important parameter that we have to use here. That is, for a reinforcement, we will already be conducting laboratory tensile strength. Okay. So through the laboratory tensile strength test, the value which you are obtaining is the T ultimate. Okay. So T ultimate is actually the tensile strength of the reinforcement obtained through laboratory tensile test. But this tensile strength value can never be achieved in the actual field condition. Okay, because in actual field condition, the reinforcement will be subjected to several damages. Okay, there can be construction induced damage, there can be creep induced damage, there can be other environmental induced damages. So all these damages will not help in achieving the tensile strength obtained through laboratory test. Okay, so in actual field condition, we need to know what is the actual or allowable design strength of the reinforcement. Okay, so that is basically the long-term design strength of the reinforcement which we are trying to find out. Okay, so TA denotes the long-term allowable design strength of the reinforcement, which will be achievable in field. Okay, so that is equal to the creep reduction factor into the T ultimate divided by the environmental degradation factor into FD, which is the construction induced damage, into FS. FS is a total factor of safety. Okay, so usually you find the allowable loads by how do you find the allowable loads? Allowable loads are usually found out by dividing the ultimate forces by factor of safety, right? Okay, so this is how you usually find the allowable loads. Now in this case, that is not just enough. Okay, we still need to find what is the long-term strength which can be achieved in the field. So in order to find out that long-term strength only, we are incorporating all these factors. That is the damage factors. There is a creep reduction factor, and this creep reduction factor is based on the type of polymer material which you have. Polymer material which is used in the reinforcement making. So based on that, you have different creep reduction factors. Then there is the environmental degradation factor and constructional induced damage factor. Okay, so incorporating all these damage factors, you will finally be able to get the long-term allowable design strength of the reinforcement. Okay. Now, so this is your typical cross section of a retaining wall. So L is the length of the, that is the total length of the reinforcement which is used in this retaining wall. Now pink colored portion becomes the active part of your retaining wall, which is called as the reinforced soil block. Okay, or that acts as a rigid block. So we have already seen in external stability analysis what what were the different types of external failures which this rigid block was subjected to, and how you check the stability against each of those failures. Now here, see, so your green dotted indicates the reinforcement placed at different depths along the height of the wall, and T here actually denotes the tensile strength of the reinforcement. Okay, so this tensile strength is actually the TA itself. Okay, this is TA, which we have. Okay, that is the long-term allowable design strength of reinforcement after incorporating all the damage factors to the ultimate design strength. You will get the long-term allowable design strength. Okay, so once if pressure is applied on the wall, what happens is that forces will be transferred into each of these reinforcements. Okay, so at different depths, what happens is that the forces will be transferred to these reinforcements. Okay, so the force transferred into reinforcement is shown by this sigma VB. Sigma VB denotes the force or the pressure transferred into each layer of reinforcement kept at a particular depth. Okay, and to counteract that pressure which is transferred into the reinforcement, what happens? Tensile forces will be mobilized within the reinforcement. Okay, now that tensile mobilized will be the tensile capacity of the reinforcement TA. Okay, and which acts in a direction opposite to the direction of the sigma VB. Okay, so due to the pressure exerted within the wall, each layer of reinforcement will be subjected to a force, okay, which is shown as sigma VB. Now to counteract that force, the tensile capacity of the reinforcement will be mobilized, that is TA, which acts in a direction opposite to sigma VB. Okay, so these are the two forces. Then here this line indicates the rupture plane, which is usually seen for a retaining wall. Okay, so generally these type of rupture planes are observed in a reinforced soil retaining wall which is constructed using polymeric materials, or our geosynthetic materials are polymeric materials, or you can call them flexible reinforcements. Okay, so for retaining walls which are constructed using flexible type of reinforcements or polymeric reinforcements, this type of a planar rupture plane or is observed. Okay, so this is given by our Rankine's. This is given by our Rankine formula. So here the rupture plane is said to it's said to be located at an angle of 45 plus phi by 2. Okay, that is phi r by 2. Phi r is actually the angle of internal friction of the reinforced soil field. Okay, so as per Rankine's concept, this rupture plane will be located at an angle of 45 plus phi r by 2. Okay, now we have already said that reinforcements are prone to two different types of failures. That is, it can either fail due to rupture. Now rupture failure happens when the force transferred into that is the force transferred into, one second, okay, so the force transferred into each of this reinforcement exceeds the allowable tensile strength of the reinforcement, then the reinforcement will fail by rupture. Okay. Now there is the other type of failure is pull out failure for reinforcement. That happens when sufficient length is not embedded beyond this rupture plane. Okay. So that embedment length is actually denoted as LE. Here LR is the length from the phasing panel to the rupture plane, and LE denotes the length of the reinforcement from the rupture plane till the end of the reinforced soil block. So at each depth, the reinforcement should have sufficient embedment length. Okay. So if there is no sufficient embedment length at each depth, then what happens is that due to the forces exerted on them, this can get easily pulled out. So usually in the design process, we have to find both the vertical spacing as well as the embedment length LE. See, this is a very laborious process in general. So mostly these type of problems are done in Excel sheets, so that it is since it's a very lengthy process. But for now, we'll actually stop our design after finding the vertical spacing. Okay. Now let's see how the force transferred into each layer of reinforcement is found out. Now here I have considered a layer of reinforcement placed at a depth Z, okay, from the top of the wall. Now, due to the forces exerted on the reinforcement, the actual force which is transferred into each layer of reinforcement will be the KAR. Okay, this is actually KAR, that is the coefficient of active earth pressure of the reinforced soil fill into sigma VB, that is the effective stress at that depth of the reinforcement. So Ka into sigma Vb will give you the force which is acting at a particular depth of the retaining wall in a reinforcement layer. Okay. Now that sigma Vb at any depth, it can be calculated as using the Meyerhof formula which we had used earlier. So it will be the total vertical load divided by the effective length over which it is acting. So this formula is same as the Meyerhof formula which we had used in checking the stability analysis against bearing capacity failure. So here we'll have to check the forces transferred at each depth of the reinforcement layer. So for that, sigma Vb can be used. So sigma Vb into the coefficient of active earth pressure of the reinforced fill will give you the total force transferred. Now that should be equal to, for safety purpose, that should be equal to the allowable tensile strength which is mobilized in the reinforcement. Okay, so that is Ta. Now these will be opposite in direction, right? So, but here if you see, this TA, that is the allowable design strength, the unit of TA will be kilonewton per meter, right? Okay, so we know that the tensile strengths are calculated per unit length of the reinforcement. So this is kilonewton in meter, but here if you look at this unit, it is in kilonewton per meter square. Okay, so if you want to get the total force which acts per unit length of the wall, then we will multiply that with SV. Okay, so then we will get the total force per meter length. Here once you have multiplied the Ka into sigma Vb with SV, we will get the unit as kilonewton per meter. Okay, so here actually the other relevance, the actual relevance of SV is that, see, at each layer of the at each layer of the reinforcement, there is a particular area, okay, from which the forces will be transferred into reinforcement. Okay, so usually at a if you consider at a reinforcement at a particular depth, the forces, the contributory forces are coming from a length of SV by 2 from above. That is 1 second. So the contributory forces come from a length of SB by 2 above the reinforcement and SV by 2 below the reinforcement. Okay, so that is why in effect we consider that as SV. Okay, so the contributory area from where the forces will be transferred into each layer of reinforcement will be half the spacing above and from half the spacing below. Okay, so here, so thereby we'll get the total force transferred into the reinforcement layer. Now for safety, this total force should be equal to the allowable tensile strength of the reinforcement. Okay. K is equal to KAR, which is the coefficient of active earth pressure of the reinforced soil fill. Now using this formula, we can actually calculate the spacing to be given between the vertical spacing to be given between the reinforcements. So spacing will be equal to TA by KA into sigma VT. Okay. So more, the more actually with this we will stop our design for now. Because see, otherwise it's a very lengthier process to find out the embedment length and for other forces, pull out forces at each layer of reinforcement. Okay, so for now we will stop our design with finding the vertical spacing between the reinforcements, and we will draw the figure as well. So for the time being, we'll stop our design once we have fixed the vertical spacing between the reinforcements for the entire height of the retaining wall. But just for the knowledge purpose, I'll explain how we can calculate the length LR and length LE at various depths of the reinforcements, various depth of the retaining wall. Okay, because in the actual design process, we don't stop once we have found out the vertical spacing. It is more laborious. We'll have to find the shear force, actual shear force transferred into each layer of reinforcement, and also we have to calculate the embedment length at each depth of reinforcement. So it's a very lengthier process. But just for you to know, see, from the geometry itself, we can find out LR and LE. See, for flexible type of reinforcements, that is our polymeric reinforcements or our geosynthetic reinforcements, the rupture plane is assumed to be located at an angle of 45 plus phi r by 2 in the retaining walls. Okay, so this method actually is called as the tie-back wedge method, where the rupture plane is found to be located at an angle of 45 plus phi r by 2. Now from geometry, the other angle becomes 45 minus phi r by 2. So you can find out length LR. Length LR will be equal to, length LR will be equal to this length, which is h minus z. Z is actually the depth measured from top of the wall. So h minus z will give you this length. That into tan of 45 minus phi r by 2 will give you the length LR at that particular depth. Okay, and LE, to calculate LE, we need to calculate the actual shear forces transmitted into each layer of reinforcement. Okay, so here this figure shows you reinforcement at a particular depth Z from the top of the wall. Now this here shows the shear forces and the normal forces acting on that layer of reinforcement. Okay, so to counteract that, we'll always have a T allowable acting in the opposite direction. Now if you are equating the shear forces acting here, that will be T allowable is equal to tau into shear force tau into the length LE. Okay, but since the shear force is acting on both sides of the reinforcement, it will be 2 times tau into LE. That is the total shear force transferred. So to counteract that, we have the T allowable. So in this equation, we can actually write tau as C plus sigma n, which is a normal stress, into tan delta. So where delta is actually the interface angle between the soil and the reinforcement. Now from this equation, you will get the embedment length as T allowable by 2 into C plus sigma n tan delta. Sigma n is a normal stress, so that can be written as the unit weight of soil into the depth Z. Okay. So using these equations, you can calculate the LR and LE at each depth of the retaining wall. Okay. And as per our Federal Highway Administration Code guidelines, minimum of 1 meter length embedment length should be provided beyond the rupture plane. Okay. So for our design for now, you can just stop the design once you have fixed the vertical spacing between the reinforcements. And I'll explain one design problem of a reinforced soil retaining wall in the next video. So thank you all.